Hey everyone, it's me HawkeyeG and I'm here with another video for you. This time it's some campaign tips for the Reikland campaign of the Empire race in Total War Warhammer 3's Immortal Empires campaign. The idea of this video is to hit on some of the key points of this campaign that I find come up in the earlier stages in order to ensure that you have a safe and stable start to your campaign and then can round out the end of it by addressing whatever comes at the end. It'll give you tips on dealing with specific factions, as well as how to set up other elements of your campaign like your army or maybe buildings you need to focus on. And I try to stick to some of the earlier parts of the game because the end of some campaigns can be pretty diverse. Now, Reikland is a faction I'm sure many people are familiar with. This guide should have been a long time coming, and I have to admit I've actually been pretty sick this week. I managed to contract coronavirus. I'm not feeling the greatest, so I apologize for any shortcomings on this video as a result of that. However, I've still been hard at work as much as I can be, and I'm looking forward to getting this video done. This campaign is a lot more interesting, it's a lot more challenging in Game 3, and as of patch 2.2, the changes to faction potential, especially if you're playing on Legendary Campaign difficulty or even very hard, we're seeing a lot more powerful major factions, and of course, starting as Reikland, you're surrounded by a lot more potentially dangerous enemy major factions. So it can be a pretty volatile campaign. It can be interesting how different things turn out, but I think with a couple of key tips and pieces of advice, you'll be able to navigate through whatever different situations come up and be able to reach a successful campaign resolution, or at least put yourself well on your way to doing so. Now with that being said, let's get into the advice. So the first piece of advice is just a general piece of advice that I think applies to this campaign, and it really occurs at every stage of the campaign, no matter which enemy you're fighting and which direction you're going. That piece of advice is, be patient. It's fairly difficult to strike the correct balance between waiting too long to move out in this campaign, or moving out too early and overextending. You don't want to lose too many elector counts to the likes of Festus, Drycha, Vlad, and even Kazrak the One-Eye, right? You don't want to lose too many elector counts, but a much worse scenario is if you take a really bad fight too early on, or you move out to defend these people and save them, and you're unable to do so anyway, and it just turns out to be a setback instead of a step forward. You really want to move out to eliminate Kazrak of the Beastmen and Festus of Chaos as soon as the opportunity presents itself, but the important thing is to correctly identify that opportunity. If you move out too early on, you don't have strong enough troops, stable enough economy, and perhaps some defenses built at home, you won't be able to take worthwhile fights on the frontier, you'll end up getting pushed back to your own settlements, and you may even come under attack from some of the other nearby enemies in the campaign. The elector counts, while some of them are going to struggle pretty badly, they won't all die that quickly, and you should at least get a couple of good events through the prestige mechanic if you're saving up your prestige. That will allow you to recover a little imperial authority here and there. I don't think it's too bad to manage. Plus, when you go out to save these elector counts, you end up recovering that imperial authority anyway, so you kind of have to just risk or accept some of the penalties at certain times in order to make a better overall long-term decision. Now, tip number 2 is going to be that handgunners are going to be a really powerful and important unit for you to use in this campaign. In this particular campaign, I find that with the addition of Festus and the forces of Chaos, plus the changes to the AI dodging artillery fire a lot more frequently in Game 3, I think that handgunners are going to be the most important tool for you, or it's something that's a big mistake to overlook. Again, I'm speaking from patch version 2.2 right now. In about a month or so, we should be seeing some changes to AI artillery dodging. It's something they mentioned in the current patch notes, so maybe mortars will become more relevant at that time. For now, I think it's pretty important to bring the handgunners against the forces of chaos that you'll inevitably be fighting early on. I personally recommend whatever amount of missile units you usually bring, you make about half of them handgunners, or maybe even more if you're confident with using them effectively. Now, if you're not buying it so far, let's look at some of the units that I expect you'll encounter so you can see what I mean. Warriors of Chaos, of course, are going to end up with Marauders no matter what they do. Pretty low armor, but they do have shields. This is the one unit you, of course, don't have to worry about with your handgunners, but it's why a nice balance of handgunners and crossbows is good. Crossbows aren't useless, but you won't see their army with too many Marauders unless you've just wiped it from upgraded status. There's of course a bunch of monsters and beasts, and the extended roster is included as well. This is going to be, like, Nurgle units are all going to show up for Festus. You're likely to have stuff like Plague Toads, Plague Bearers, and especially some Nurglings. When it comes to their monsters, I think you can go either way, right? Some of these things like Nurglings have no armor. Plague Bearers have fairly low armor. At most, things like a Plague Toad of Nurgle, a Beast of Nurgle, or a Giant are going to have 50 armor. There is also the Armored Chaos Trolls. This is maybe the one exception here that will get upgraded from their starting Trolls unit. But anyway, 50 armor is probably the most these are going to have. And Nurgle Beasts will also have physical resistance baked in, but this means it doesn't favor either weapon. I think you can do fine with crossbows here, but you can see the Handgunners would have a value as well. On average, the enemy is going to get, about 30 to 40% damage reduction. That's a really rough number, I know, when it comes to those 50 armor units. And so, especially on something like a Beast of Nurgle or a Giant, like the Handgunners having difficulty with line of sight isn't going to be a downside. So they're going to be just as effective, if not occasionally more so. But really, the important units to consider are things like Chariots. If they're bringing Chariots, these have 110 armor. If they're bringing Cavalry, these have 110 armor. Chaos Knights of Nurgle actually have 120 and shields. Chaos Warriors, they're going to have 100 armor minimum, no matter what variant it is. And of course, they're going to be bringing plenty of Nurgle. Even stuff like Forsaken has 85 armor. Like, you don't want crossbowmen to fight these. You want the Handgunners. And I probably don't have to sell you on this, but of course, Aspiring Champions and Chosen are also going to have really high armor values. So hopefully I've made my case here. A good portion of their roster, perhaps about half, is going to be very heavily armored. I mean, if you've fought Chaos in past games as Empire, you know that armor piercing is the secret to it, especially armor piercing artillery back in game 1 and 2. But we're not talking like, I don't think you should have Hellstorm rocket batteries by the time you're fighting Festus. That's probably too late when we talked about balance of moving out too soon or too late. That's why I think Handgunners are such a critical unit. Whether you have swordsmen or shielded spearmen and bringing some mortars and bringing some crossbowmen, those things are going to deal appropriately with other problems. But the reason you bring Handgunners is because the Handgunners will deal with the problems that you don't have the other tools to deal with. Now, for example, if I pull up, this is a replay that I had from the campaign that I've played as Reikland. And you can see here, I haven't even followed my own advice. I've definitely moved out too early without enough Handgunners here. And I definitely paid for it in this battle. You can see they don't have a ton of the units that we're most concerned about, right? They do have the armored trolls upgraded from the base trolls. They have a couple of Chaos Warriors in here, but even so, and then there's the Exalted Hero as well, and they were on a chariot. Even so, that's 5 units that I really want Handgunners for, and I only have 2 Handgunners. That's not enough to deal with this in an effective manner. That's to say nothing of the Beasts of Nurgle, the 2 Chaos Giants, including the Regiment of Renowned Chaos Giant. I mean, they've got units like Nurglings and the Chaos Warhounds, which we do actually want the crossbowmen to deal with more effectively. But they still have things like Beasts of Nurgle, Chaos Giants. Again, the Handgunners aren't going to have a super significant advantage over, but they're going to be good. They're going to be able to take those down in fights. And really, like the Nurglings and the Warhounds, they don't feel like they're the most serious threat here, right? It's the Chaos Warriors. If they get on top of your army, you're in a lot of trouble. If this Exalted Hero gets into your archer backline, you're going to have a lot of trouble taking it down if you don't have armor piercing. Like I said, even in this campaign, this is why I'm giving you this advice. I moved out here too early. I should have had 4 Handgunners in this army at least in order to start taking good fights. Because this fight was tough. This fight was really tough and practically ended in a stalemate. We won the battle, but it prevented us from moving forward in the war, and they had just enough time to recover to kind of end up having to repeat this fight until I resupplied this army with a couple additional Handgunners. Alright, so we're jumping ahead a decent ways into this campaign. You can see I've taken out Festus, we've destroyed Khazrak, and like I said, the advice that I gave I think applies there. Again, some of the setbacks that I experienced and the decisions that I made, it's tough, you don't want to let them sit forever, you don't want to sit back and watch Hawkland and Midland die, but if you just go over there too fast, things are going to go bad. We're in a good position on that front. However, it's now time to talk about the Southwest front. I think this is the next major thing that's going to occur in your campaign, is these enemies to the southwest. You have the Barrow Legion of the Vampire Counts, and you have Broken Axe of the Greenskins. In my opinion, one or both of these factions will become your enemy. It's very typical for one or both of them to grow pretty strong in power, start taking out their enemies, and may eventually put the pressure on you. I've had the Barrow Legion get strong enough to break through the fort and actually take Marienburg and start harassing some of the territories around here, which is what happened in this particular campaign. I've also had Grom the Paunch get strong enough to just directly confront me at my own fort that you capture from the start of the game. In either case, it's something to be aware of. I definitely still think that, despite those threats, it's important to clean up Festus and Khazrak first, but you cannot let your guard down completely on the home front, and that's why I talk about patience as a first step, because you need to make sure that you can secure your home front before leaving it. You may even want to begin recruiting a small army before either of these factions to the southwest even become a potential threat to you, because by the time they're ready to start attacking the fort, you will have not enough time to recruit a panic army to protect it, and you'll be scrambling to plug the hole that's now open into the center of your territory. Grom might declare a WOG on you, or even if it's on someone else, they're going to have a double stack army that can just push to the fort and probably do a lot of damage or put you at risk. Otherwise, when the Barrow Legion are left alone for long enough, they can collect a decent amount of territory, and if they take this fort, it's the same scenario. They have an opening into your territory. You need to make sure that you have some systems in place to defend that. It may even be worth building a garrison in Isleheart, especially if it looks like Marienburg or anybody really is going to start losing to the Barrow Legion. Even in the early game, it can be useful against Khazrak. Now, my next tip is to say Bretonnia is for the Bretonnians. If or when you do inevitably encounter these incursions from the southwest, you may be tempted to take some of that territory for yourself. Maybe Montfort and Castle Bastan doesn't feel like a big overextension, and well, Grom's already attacking you anyways. Or, hey, if I'm coming through here and I'm destroying the Barrow Legion, why don't I take at least one of these provinces? It's good territory. It would be easy to build up. If I have a good friendship with Bretonnia, they'll pretty much hold it for me, right? You've done the work. Why shouldn't you have some of the reward? Well, while I don't think that is the worst option, I do think there's a better one. You should give these lands back to Bretonnia. Corone specifically, assuming they're still alive, patch 2.2 has seen a boon to basically all major factions and their capabilities. It doesn't matter which faction you pick, they're all going to be getting bonuses, they're all going to perform better. And frankly, you're going to have more serious problems in the Empire that you're going to need to deal with directly yourself. You're not going to be able to afford to float an army or even really be spending money trying to secure one of these provinces against this enemy that exists. The idea here is that by empowering Bretonnia, then they'll actually be able to deal with this problem for you. Giving them more strength gives them more security, it gives you a valuable ally, and it allows you to focus your attention on the things that matter the most. Another small tip I have is to actually see if you can get a non-aggression pact with Durthu. In an interesting twist, I actually had Durthu offer me a non-aggression pact in this campaign while I was cleaning up things in the southwest. It seems like in most Empire campaigns, Durthu inevitably becomes a problem. He's fairly aggressive. You can see he's spilling out into nearby territories. He often will end up with negative relations with some of these other nearby factions and want to fight them. So fighting him may be inevitable. But when you're working on destroying the Barrow Legion or the Broken Axe, you may actually have an opportunity to build some friendly relations with him and get a non-aggression pact. And while that won't, prevent him from going to war with you forever, it'll at least push that time off by a little bit, give you a little bit better friendly relations, and give him one less reason to attack you. So if you can sneak in a pact with Durthu, I think it's worth keeping an eye on as an option. Now, I think the last tip that I want to talk about here is to do with Vlad von Karstein. I haven't talked about Vlad yet because in this campaign there's actually more immediate concerns to address, but much like in Game 2, I do find vampire counts to be your primary obstacle towards the end of the early game and entry into mid-game. By now, it's pretty likely that Clan Moulder, along with some Chaos or Norska tribes, have consolidated some power in the northeast, and they might start pushing through this territory fairly soon. However, Vlad von Karstein will already be well established and effectively on a march right to your front doorstep. While you don't want to overlook events in the north, and if you can, you want to try to delay that invasion as much as possible, I think it's much more critical to push to the east and revive or recover whatever elector counts you can, getting them back on track, getting some fealty for yourself, regaining authority in many ways, and establishing security on another complete border. I've also been seeing Ungrim do pretty well in the couple campaigns I've played on patch 2.2. If you're lucky, he'll be doing well in your campaign and will harass Sylvania and the vampire counts while you're working on your incursion. It'll give you a great opportunity to get a free start and reclaim some lost territory pretty easily. Plus, if you position yourself along this flank effectively, you can use Drycha as a bit of a barrier against these forces coming in through the north. It also is going to give you potentially 2 solid provinces all to yourself. There's no elector count that you should give this to. You should keep it for yourself. You can get a gold mine and some other trade resources. So there's a lot of value to be gained and power for yourself. There's also a lot of imperial authority and elector counts to recover. It's overall a really big win. And while it may leave, if you decide to capture these territories up north, it may leave you vulnerable. It may leave some of the other northern flank parts vulnerable. It's still a more immediate concern. Like, this is a more important thing to address than whatever's happening out here. I don't want to lose Hawkeland, but if I have to lose it, I will. And I'd rather do that than put off fighting Vlad any further. Just remember, bring rocket batteries against him. Hellblaster volley guns if you can. Maybe that's overkill. But rocket batteries will do really well. Fire magic, or really any of the good offensive lores of magic. Just keep in mind that magic is going to be really useful, and the rocket batteries for clearing out a lot of the chaff. Then the handgunners are there to clean up any of the armored units like grave guards or their cavalry. And from there you should be able to manage with, swordsmen, spearmen, crossbowmen, cutting down the rest of their forces. And that should be the best way to solve it. So with that being said, that covers everything I wanted to for my campaign tips for Reikland. I think it'll give you a really solid starting position to fight from. I think that it's hard to plan out further parts in this campaign. I'm certainly open to talking about it, and if you have any questions, please do leave them in the comment section below. How to deal with the Warriors of Chaos and the Norsca invasion, as well as trying to fight off Skaven at the same time. It's kind of 2 different forces that you need 2 different types of units to best deal with. But you're going to have to fight them both at the same time. It's really about just managing your economy effectively, supporting and supplying your allies, and at least hoping that if they don't help you on the attack, they at least make for good bait. But ensuring that there's as few threats as possible to the whole of the Empire so that everyone can focus their forces and dedicate themselves to one front, especially making that front Norsca in the late game should really help things out a lot. Hopefully some of these key pointers about which units that you should use, how to approach your campaign expansion and planning, and what kinds of threats you need to look for and anticipate in this campaign. I hope that those concepts will give you the right tools to succeed in your own campaigns. If you did enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. It always helps me out, lets me know what you like to see. If you have any other questions or you have comments or tips of your own, if there's anything you think that I missed, let me know in the comments section down below. And as always, thanks for watching, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.